The recent balance patch is live and the meta has shifted once again. While the nerfs might not have been huge, the meta has slightly shifted as a result and the gaps between the tiers have lessened. Many players were questioning if these nerfs would be enough, and today we here at Tempo Storm are excited to take a look at the result the latest balance change has had on the meta. Welcome to the latest Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot breakdown. Today, we're going to be adventuring into the post-nerf meta to see what decks are on top. Is Tempo Warrior still the best deck in the game? Is Zoo Warlock viable after the nerfs to Scrap Imp? Join us as we answer these questions and more. Before we begin, please help us out by subscribing to our channel and turning notifications on to keep up to date with all of our Hearthstone content. Also, be sure to check out the full meta snapshot over at tempostorm.com. Now let's jump right into Tier 1. Leading off Tier 1 once again is Tempo Warrior. This archetype just won't stay down, despite Blizzard targeting it with 2 different nerfs. This deck is extremely versatile and easily the best deck in the game, and the nerfs did practically nothing to the archetype. Many players have been calling for nerfs, but most expected either Kor'kron Elite or Risky Skipper to be hit with the nerf bat. While the nerfs it did receive slowed down the archetype slightly, it wasn't enough to keep it down. Tempo Warrior has a fantastic matchup against Zoo Warlock, but for now, Garish remains on top. Tempo Warrior has a fantastic matchup and can easily stave off their pressure continually. This matchup only got better after the nerfs, as Warrior now has an even easier time clearing buffed boards with Risky Skipper. When it comes to bad matchups, it's no secret that Warrior struggles with Priest, as the continued removal and healing that Priest has makes it very difficult for Warrior to set up their game plan. Next up in Tier 1 is Tempo Demon Hunter. While the nerf to Crimson Sigil Runner was relatively huge to the class, the nerf to Priestess of Fury wasn't a very large hit to Illidan. The majority of top-level decks had already begun to cut Priestess in order to run Beaming Sidekick, making this nerf seem kind of pointless. These nerfs weren't enough to hold the archetype down though, as the class is just so flexible and will continue to prey on ladder for a long time to come. When it comes to good matchups for Tempo Demon Hunter, the archetype tends to prey on slower decks that need time to assemble their game plan. Things like Spell Druid or Highlander Mage need their opponent to have a slower start for them to easily win, making Demon Hunter problematic for them. When it comes to bad matchups, the only one that's really horrific for this deck is Tempo Warrior. The Warrior has the ability to stave off the Demon Hunter pressure, gain enough armor to avoid being burnt down, and even can apply pressure of their own. This matchup is very difficult for the Demon Hunter to win and will require a well-thought-out plan and believing in the heart of the cards. The last deck in Tier 1 in this meta snapshot is Galakrond Priest. This deck has climbed its way into this tier over the last few weeks and does not want to let go of its spot. This archetype was one of the few top decks to dodge the nerfs. While this archetype is a favorite by many, the mirror has led to some insanity to say the least. Even some players have taken to conceding the mirror on the first turn of the game. Galakrond Priest is arguably the best control deck right now, so give it a try if this is your kind of archetype. As we mentioned before, Galakrond Priest is the best deck currently against Tempo Warrior, making it a solid choice for ladder. As for bad matchups, Highlander Hunter can be extremely difficult for the Priest to win. No matter how much pressure you stave off, they will eventually be able to get there thanks to Hunter's continued sizable threats. Now that we've taken a look at the top decks within the first tier, you're probably wondering what decks barely missed the top of the meta. As per usual, we're going to be taking a look at the top 3 decks within Tier 2. All of these lists are competitively viable, and they have an array of different matchups, so be sure to check out the full report over at tempostorm.com for more information. Leading off Tier 2 this time around is Highlander Hunter. This archetype was previously in Tier 3, but rose all the way to the top of Tier 2 thanks to a lot of high legend players experimenting with the deck. The archetype was seeing a surge in play before the nerfs, but now with different decks shifting around the tier list, it has had its time to shine. This archetype makes use of the powerful Highlander cards alongside all of Hunter's powerful curve minions to kill the opponent over several turns. While the deck certainly can have a hyper-aggressive start, it typically will take several turns of pressuring the opponent down to close the game out in the later turns. Highlander Hunter has a fantastic matchup against both Galakrond Priest and Highlander Mage, as the decks struggle to deal with Hunter's continued pressure. As for bad matchups, Highlander Hunter typically has a rough time against decks that can fight for board aggressively, such as Zoo Warlock or Tempo Demon Hunter. Next up in Tier 2 is Spell Druid. This archetype took a bit of a backseat after its original nerf to Kael'thas, but now that lists have stepped away from running it, the deck is seeing play once again. This list is pretty consistent and only runs 3 minions in order to increase the odds that Fungal Fortunes doesn't discard any minions. Spell Druid is the best performing Druid archetype on ladder right now, so be sure to give it a try if you miss Malfurion. Barbarian. Spell Druid overperforms against decks that are slow out of the gate, such as Tempo Rogue. They typically give the Druid enough time to get their own game plan online, and then struggle to deal with it once it's been put together. Much like Highlander Hunter, this archetype has a rough time with decks that can take the board and continually pressure you out, making both Tempo Demon Hunter and Zoo Warlock difficult matchups. The last archetype we'll be taking a look at in Tier 2 is the recently nerfed Zoo Warlock. While this nerf might have been a surprise to some players, it was mostly like the nerf to Ankar, where it was a preemptive nerf. If Imprisoned Scrap Imp went unnerfed, it was likely that Zoo would take over the meta, making the game come down to whoever drew their 2-drop first, and if we've learned anything from Prince Keleseth, some metas are better left untouched. Zoo Warlock typically plays the charged shell now, making the health nerf less noticeable, as your goal is simply to burst down your opponent. Sadly though, the missing health can be huge against Risky Skipper or other decks with smaller AoE removal. Zoo Warlock has a pretty good matchup spread and can prey on other board-centric decks, as they typically can't deal with both the overstatted minions and Magic Carpet. As for bad matchups, Zoo Warlock has a rough time against decks with access to a lot of removal, such as Tempo Warrior. Gaining an edge in a meta where the top tier has 3 different types of decks can be difficult, but it's not impossible. As with every Tempo Storm meta snapshot breakdown, we do our best to give you a good deck that can counter the meta. The archetype that we will suggest to you might struggle if you don't find yourself queuing into the right matchups, but given the right circumstance, the deck will thrive. The archetype that we suggest this time around is Pirate Warrior. Many players doubt this archetype and might be surprised to see it in Tier 3 on our tier list. This archetype has a good matchup against Galakrond Priest, and even a relatively even one against Tempo Demon Hunter. It does struggle against Tempo Warrior though, so makes it a risky choice for ladder at times. This archetype certainly isn't as strong as it was in the patches days, but thanks to the powerful pirate package, coupled with the fact that players will mistakenly mulligan for Tempo Warrior against you, Pirate Warrior is a solid choice for ladder right now. Give it a try and let us know what you think down in the comments below. That wraps up our Tempo Storm meta snapshot breakdown. The meta hasn't changed much since the nerfs, and the only real change was the drop-off in Tempo Rogue from Tier 1. Players do feel like this meta is a bit less swingy than it was prior to the balance change though, so it's definitely a lot healthier. What do you think of the meta so far? Do you feel like Blizzard will need to nerf again? Or are things in a relatively good spot? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching our video. We really do appreciate your support. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with all of our Tempo strategy content. While you're at it, please turn on notifications so you can be informed of whenever we upload a video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.